Welcome to the third part of the Health and Wealth series of Coffee with Alissa. We're joined again by Dr. Dan Turro of Turro Family Chiropractic in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. Dan, let's start with another quick review of our first session, the dimensions of stress.
So we talked about the dimensions of stress. Is stress good or bad? But really it comes down to the three dimensions of stress: physical, biochemical, mental, emotional, which I kind of combine into relational, which we will get into today. So those are the three dimensions of stress. And by managing those three levels of stress, you really optimize your body's ability to get healthy and stay in a healthy state of adaptation, right? Which is, we'd say, the simplest definition of health, that state of adaptation. So, the better you're able to, assess, and stay ahead of the game when it comes to those three dimensions of stress, the better ability you have to be healthy.
Okay, well, let's jump right into the first question. Can you define these two words, connection and separation?
But yeah, the way I really look at this is, connection from more of an emotional or, from a feeling. If things are connected, you look at a puzzle piece, right? Or a puzzle board. You get a 1,000-piece puzzle board. If things are connected, they're in the correct order, right? So a healthy order where things are connected, then you see the big vision. You see the ultimate result of, which is a beautiful picture of a 1,000-piece puzzle in front of you. If you have a disconnection or a separation, if those puzzle pieces start to get out of alignment, or you have a couple pieces on the floor because you were doing it with your young children, whatever the case may be. Well, now you might have the same picture, but it's going to be a much more distorted view. So you have a disorder. So really it comes down to, do you have a healthy, beautiful order with that, a connection with that picture, or is something disorganized, disorderly? That's kind of what we're looking at when it comes to this idea of, relationship and connection versus separation.
So human beings are naturally relational. And I truly believe we're all uniquely designed for a purpose, and that we journey through life discovering our mission. We grow with every step that we take. We've kind of talked about that throughout, whether it's a step forward or backwards. Can you elaborate on purpose, the why am I here, and then mission, which is, what's the result of living out my purpose?
We talked a lot about this idea of adaptation and, our ability. It's a state of being, right? Health is a state of being. If you look at the World Health definition, and we didn't even go into this on the first episode, but the World Health Organization defines health as an optimal state of physical, mental, social well-being. I always like to add spiritual well-being, not merely the absence of disease. So this idea of healthy is this, it's a state of being. So it's a state of connection. And, it's not just the connectedness inside of our bodies. Last time we talked a lot about the physical, physical injuries, but, being physically put together. And we have our nervous system that runs and coordinates and communicates, all of that internal connection, the biomechanics of everything and the chemistry of everything. So all of that is related and interconnected. But then, so that's from a microscopic cellular level and what's happening inside. But now we take it to more of a societal, a civilization level, and how are we interconnected with each other, and ultimately the intelligence of why we're here. So, this idea that we are relational beings. That's why you look at something like the pandemic that happened over the past several years. When we went into isolation is not healthy for any individual. That has been proven well before the pandemic. That has been proven over and over and over again. That's why you look at different things like certain prisons, and they use isolation as a tactic for punishment, because they know that being isolated from that relationship of other human beings, is significantly detrimental to your social, emotional, and mental well-being. So, I absolutely agree that we're designed to be relational, and part of that relationship comes down to this idea of a sense of purpose. Why am I here? Okay. For myself, just as an example, there are different, I have different purposes, as a human being. I am, first and foremost, I'm a husband, I am a father, but I'm also a chiropractor, and in conjunction with that chiropractor, I consider myself a healer, which is truly just a facilitator to help people, achieve health and well-being, right? I don't heal you, you heal you. When you come into my office, I'm just merely unlocking any blockages, or distortions or separations that would keep you from being at a whole, a complete level of health and well-being. So, I really, from my perspective, we don't talk enough about that, in a public education system. We don't explore that idea enough of why am I here? What is my purpose for being here, right? Because life is a gift. So if we're not exploring that idea, that concept, and we start to lose that sense of purpose, or we never, fully define what that sense of purpose is, well, then I think we become disconnected, we become separated from it. And the more we're separated from it, that causes more disorder, more chaos. When you have more chaos in your life, what is the state of your mental, emotional, relational health, right? It's going to decline. That's just, it's going to, automatically go into this state of disorder and chaos. So by actively helping to define what my purpose is, whether it's my purpose as a father, my purpose as a husband, chiropractor, healer, by helping to explore that, understand it, define it, certainly early on in my life, but then, on a daily basis, because that changes, right? Your purpose, will change throughout your life. And, you always hear about these stories where, someone gets this slap in the face of, they were going down this one path, and, then they have this, come to Jesus moment, and it's like, boom, they do a complete 180 with what they're doing in their life. And so, this idea of this sense of purpose, helps you get connected with who we truly are, and this life is a gift. So, but then once we start defining what that is, then I think the next step becomes, well, what does that look like? What is the result of me living an on-purpose life? And that's where you start to look at vision of, when you start to look at your life, and I'm sure you do this with your clients, Alissa. When someone comes to you in their 30s or 40s, and you have to look at a vision, you have to be the advocate for that individual, 20, 30, 40 years from now. What is their life going to look like financially, 4 decades from now? So that's your job, to help them unpack that vision. What do you want? What is that going to look like? What is you living your purpose now with whatever their spousal orientation is, or whatever their vocation is? How does that apply, and what is that going to look like in the future? That's the vision, and that's what you as a financial planner, and I think I as a healthcare professional, chiropractor, help people see. I always say I'm the advocate for not you sitting here in front of me, but I'm the advocate of you 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now. And a lot of people don't think about that. So, I think it's important to unpack that when we're looking at a relational, mental, emotional state of health and well-being.
As I think further into that, it's like, well, who gets to participate in this mission? Is it just me?
Well, and that's where, again, as a sovereign individual, right, we get to decide who participates in that. So, we have this idea of, our purpose. So why am I here? And ultimately, I want to get to the vision. But how do we get there? That's the plan, right? That's the mission. This idea of purpose, mission, vision. The mission is the plan. My wife and I are very blessed. We did this. It's called Strength Finders. I forget what it's. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, we actually did it as a team at work as well. And it was fascinating. Yeah,
absolutely. And so we did it through our church organization. But to find out those top 5 qualities of who you are. It was really neat to see. And again, the idea, changing the concept, like we talked about, a couple videos ago, we talked about this idea of changing, paradigms, changing our thinking. So this idea of, we don't want to strengthen our weaknesses. No, we want to focus on our strengths. and then bring in, so this kind of goes to this idea of who participates. If you focus on your strengths, recognizing that you're not going to be everything to everyone. So just by coming to, in understanding that you're not going to be everything to everyone, giving yourself that grace, I think, from a mental, emotional state of health and relational state of health, has a huge impact on your ability to be healthy. And so this idea of who else gets to participate in your mission and ultimately achieving the result of your vision, you want to find other individuals who maybe have the strengths that you don't have, and you start putting them on your team, right? You start making them a part of your life. And so when I look at myself and my wife, we're so blessed. And again, this is where I believe divine intervention came into play when it came to my wife and I getting together. We're looking at this strength finder thing years from now. Many people ask us, well, how do you work together in business? Because my wife, she manages the office and our family and my life and everything else. But I am very much, if you look at one of my top 5 strengths, being visionary or future casting was one of my top 5 strengths. So I could see the vision, okay? I could see the forest, but when it comes to strategic planning, I am absolutely terrible at actually getting it done, getting from one side of the forest to the other. One of her top 5 strengths was strategic planning. So when people always ask us, how do you work so well together? We didn't have an answer for many years, but once we did that strength finder, it was incredible to be able to see, okay, well, divine intervention, I have this vision for this business and my purpose as a chiropractor. Well, Erin has been able to take much of her strength and understanding of, and her purpose of being an incredible marketer, and being able to take that and weave that into into our business model. And now we now have a shared vision, right? We have a shared vision in terms of where we want to go. So that's the who that gets to participate. And I think your spouse is your single most important, life relationship that we all have, that you get to, have that shared vision and ultimately where you're going. And then it extends from there, into your family, your children, and how they get to participate, and then ultimately your neighbors. And, we all have to relate to these people in one way or another. Even if, you get to a point with a family member or a neighbor that, you decide hey, the way I'm going to relate to you is, we're going to wave hi, or, we're going to set up specific boundaries of how we relate. That's also important because, not only who is participating, but making sure who not to, to get involved. And again, that's okay because we're not going to be all things to all people. So, I hope that, helps to clarify a little bit, because I think it's, when we look at mental, emotional health, mental health is so important. And I think that's part of the idea we put this concept last. If we don't have, we don't have our health, we don't have much of anything. But this idea of mental health, if we're not defining these things from a very early age, but then as we continue throughout our life, I think we do all we'll hit these walls or these obstacles where, things start becoming disconnected, right? We talked about connection versus separation. We start to feel separated, disconnected from our purpose, because we get kind of stuck on the hamster wheel. And that's where we can start to, get things like anxiety, like, depression, whatever the case may be, in which we see so much of that in the United States and across the world. So if we truly want to, make sure that we're having healthy relationships, we need to make sure that we're having these conversations, on a regular basis.
Can you leave us with 3 key takeaways from the topics that we discussed today? And then I'd love to just have a little bit more conversation about some things that I pulled from your talk here, and see if you have anything to add.
ask the tough questions. That's point number one. If you're in a public school setting, I have an 11, 7, and almost 3-year-olds. My oldest and middle son, who are in the public education school system, they're not asking these questions, what is your purpose? And again, I'm not saying that that's the case in all public school situations. I'm sure some schools do it better than others, but they're not asking those existential questions on a regular basis. So making sure that, you have some sort of connection to a community organization or a church organization or some group, a group of friends that is asking those tough questions. So that you're able to, start to define them and chew on them a little bit more. I think that's very, very important for, just not how we relate with, our own mindset, but also how we relate to others, very specifically our spouse or children and, family, friends. Staying engaged, I think, is very important. Now, again, different people, you have introverts versus extroverts. My wife is very much an introvert. I find myself extroverted in some situations and introverted in others. I think it has much to do with what I do as a person. I'm in my office all day long having conversations with people. So sometimes I can be very extroverted when I'm in the office and in the daily day-to-day of what I do, and then I get home and I'm like, I want to go home up somewhere. And yes, I love my kids, but it's like we need to just unwind. But ultimately, it is about staying engaged. You need to stay engaged with with your the core people in your life, whether that is a spouse. If you don't have a spouse, making sure that you have the family member, the friends you can call upon, making sure that you are staying engaged in those close personal relationships. You can be an introvert and have one or two friends that you absolutely you have over for a movie night or just get together and play some cards. Making sure that you're staying engaged with those relationships is so incredibly important for your relational health. And then ultimately, becoming a grateful person, grateful for everything that we have. I mentioned at the beginning of this, life is a gift. And so, being grateful that, you're in the business of helping people grow their wealth, right? But ultimately being grateful for what you have. When I wake up in the morning and take my first conscious breath of air, like that's an incredible gift. And the amount of oxygen that goes into my lungs in this process, the fact that my brain was able to wake myself up, able to take a step out of bed, like every little step that I take, everything that has to happen from a biological, neurochemical level, it's just absolutely incredible. So giving thanks for everything you have, I think sets the mindset to be able to grow more, right? To those who have, little, it'll be taken away. To those who have much, much will be given. Those who have much have a great responsibility. All those types of things. Giving thanks for what you have, and it doesn't have. You don't have to be, the Jeff Bezoses and the Elon Musks of the world to be happy, right? The amount of money that you have really has very little to do with your mental, emotional health. So giving thanks for what you have, and then also giving grace. This is something that I didn't talk about too much, but the idea that you stop comparing yourself to other human beings, and that I learned that concept about 5 years ago, and it was the quote of oh my gosh, I'm going to forget it here right now. The thief of all joy. Comparison is the thief of all joy. There it is. Comparison is the thief of all joy. I first heard that, I think it was Theodore Roosevelt who said it. But this idea, when we compare ourselves to others, the grass is always greener. If you can get to yourself, stop comparing yourselves to others, and that goes along with giving yourself grace, because then you're actually, if you set yourself a vision, and you set yourself a timeline, which is important for goals, but you ultimately don't get there or don't achieve that goal. Well, if you're not giving yourself grace, then you're setting yourself up for failure for the next goal. You need to give yourself grace in terms of being able to move on from that, and stop comparing yourselves with where your colleagues are, or where your family members are, and ultimately be thankful for what you have and where you're at. That is what is going to allow you to truly be authentic in the relationships that you have, and not set you up into the spiral of poor relational health. That was a long takeaway. I'm sorry.
No, it's absolutely great. And I, just as we've been talking, we filmed these 3 videos. I just, I had taken some notes about the things that stuck out to me that really compare to the wealth building side. And I think the first thing that popped in my mind, you mentioned it in our first episode, was just our cultural need for instant gratification. So that obviously affects our health and well-being in ways that you discussed, but we see it affect people's relationships with wealth, because everyone wants to participate in market rises, but it's really hard to stay steady during downturns and volatility. But like anything, right? If we want to grow our wealth over the long term, we have to stress, as you mentioned, adding that healthy stress to our portfolio. So whether it's buying during dips when it's hard to do, or not selling during those dips because you think it might go down further. But that's really what helps to grow wealth, or at least portfolio wealth, over the long term. And then the second thing that jumped out to me was you talked about really putting a great team in place around you. So you talked about it in a healthcare perspective. So you've got doctors, chiropractors, nutritionists, therapists, right? Those people that can really keep your health and well-being in place. But we stress that on our end too, right? To put your financial team in place. So, you've got a financial advisor who, does planning. You have an accountant, you have an estate lawyer, right? So all these things are in place. All these people are communicating, and you're communicating as the client, right? What your vision and your goals are. And, our teams are the ones that help implement those plans and, hopefully help you fulfill that vision in the long term.
Exactly.
And then lastly, and you just mentioned it, and I jotted it down because this is a quote that I also use all the time, is, that comparison is the thief of joy. And we're all subject to it. We all find ourselves in those spots where we're comparing ourselves to other people. I think social media really exacerbates that issue, because we're constantly bombarded just with pictures and videos of things, and we don't always have all the context. But I think sometimes we tend to not just stress mentally, right, our emotional side, but that can often destroy us on the financial side. So we use the term like keeping up with the Joneses, right? We might put ourselves in a bad position to have that great picture or that fancy house or something, but it's really important to just develop that sound financial plan and vision for your life. Surround yourself with that team that will keep you accountable to that mission and vision, and then you hopefully achieve what you're looking to achieve down the road. Instead of always trying to have what people have, but just being content with what you have and continuing to build in accordance with that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes down to the it's a mindset, right? Wealth I truly believe is a mindset. Just like health is a state of being, wealth is a state of mind. And if you get yourself into doing, if you're given $100, if you have a poor mindset, what are you going to do? You're going to go out and spend all that money on, probably, alcohol, food, you're going to go out and, entertainment, right? That instant gratification stuff, versus if you have a wealth mindset, it's what can I do with that $100 to make it 200 a year from now. And it's growth mindset. It's the idea of sacrifice now so that I can be rewarded later. But yeah, it takes a certain person to be able to develop that. And again, just like with any skill in life, it can be honed, it can be developed. I owned a lot of that over the last decade or two. Just with going through chiropractic school, I did a lot of business, classes and mindset classes on my own and leadership classes. So it's like being able to develop a lot of that. Again, it takes time, but the more time you put into it, the easier it becomes. The easier that skill just becomes second nature. So now I get $100. I don't even think about it. It just goes it's just automatic of where it goes because we've honed those skills over the years. So yeah, I mean, and again, a lot of that comes down to who are you spending your time with. You can become the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. Not just with what you do, but your finances and how you utilize that. So yeah, great. And again, that's why I wanted to have this conversation, Alissa. Thank you for inviting me because I think that health and wealth do so much, hand in hand there. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you again, Dan. You've just shared a wealth of knowledge with us. We're very appreciative. And to our audience, thank you for watching. If you haven't seen the other videos in the series, I would encourage you to visit our YouTube channel and view them. And I look forward to seeing you next month.